Hong Kong is very close to my heart because I lived in Hong Kong and I have many colleagues in Hong Kong. So I took a great interest in what was happening in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has had deaths exceeding births since around 2020. So they're in population decline. Hong Kong are up to their 10th dose of vaccines. Hong Kong is a very cultural, they're very impacted by political factors for their birth rates. So for example, 97, the handover to China, there was a big drop in births. When things got better, then there was a rise in births. So they are very impacted. Their births tend to be quite spiky. But what we see with the rollout of COVID vaccines, we see big spikes in 2020. And I don't know how to explain this. Abortion is legal in Hong Kong, but not generally. It's not promoted or anything. It's not, they're trying to promote people to have babies. But vaccine rollout, we see a small spike in deaths. And I think that could be associated with vaccinating the elderly and most vulnerable first. So, you know, they were easy to compromise and die. They might die easily from a urinary tract infection or flu. So vaccinating them could have been the point. Then deaths appeared to go down. But once they brought out the booster doses, they started in November. There was some hesitancy, so there wasn't a big uptake initially. But as they pushed it, we now have a massive spike in deaths, which if I plot the vaccine uptake against that, which you'll see in the next slide, the deaths spiked massively. This is unprecedented rise in deaths.
Those are massive spikes, Sally.
More than double normal deaths.
Yeah, you're going from 4,000 to over 9,000 dying in the period. And friends, look at the graph to the left of the first needle before the COVID shots. You know, it's pretty steady orange line. Clearly, many spikes following that. It's hard to believe, and it's actually quite perverse that you have people literally on their 10th dose and dying still.
Including six, I mean, they're still vaccinating infants. I can look at the vaccine uptake in Hong Kong, and they're still vaccinating children and infants, pregnant women, and the elderly. And I have this data. I mean, I couldn't statistically analyze it. I'm not a skilled statistician, but the number of people taking vaccines with each dose is less. So there's less and less people, but we still see, you know, the 5th dose, look, there's a spike in death. 6th dose seemed to go down. 7th dose is a rise. December 24, they did flu and COVID promotion. There's another spike in death. And I tried to send this data to some Hong Kong departments, and they just said, please refer to our pharmacovigilance system. There's no problem.
And you know,
this graph shows you there's a massive problem.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the people still pushing these so-called vaccines will say, well, yeah, there's always going to be some adverse events, but it saved lives. No, it didn't save lives. This is just gross death. There's more death after the shots. There's more death with the shots. There's no negating it. And then when you look at your graph in the top right hand there, I mean, again, you see consistently more people are dying and less people are being born.
Correct.
That's very clear.
And this doesn't make sense. You say, okay, they rolled out, okay, so everyone should have been protected. Why did they only start dying after the 3rd dose? This is not a pattern that you will expect. If the vaccine worked, you should never have had this spike.
Yeah.
And they blame this on COVID. They very clearly blame this on COVID, but it's not a pattern that makes sense as being due to COVID. It much more makes sense that it's due to vaccine doses.
And, you know, it makes me think, going back to Dr. Dolores Cahill, 2020, before these shots ever rolled out, she talked about that. Every dose is going to increase your risk because you have a system primed to have this, you know, dangerous immune response to a body that's producing a foreign protein. And so the boosters keep killing.
Yeah. The more doses you have, the sooner you die.
Yes.
So the takeaway is whatever you've done, you can't go back, but don't take any more.
Yeah, that's very clear.
Yeah. So yeah, Hong Kong is in, they've lost 107,000 natural population since 2020. They also have an aging population. So for countries like Hong Kong, they will rely on migrants to maintain or grow their population. And Hong Kong is doing that. They're focusing on education and conventions and other things. but I haven't seen anybody acknowledge these findings.
Well, yeah, I would love to see public health care in a lot of countries like Hong Kong step over the courage line regarding the liability of governments having done this in the first place and deal with the elephant in the room. You've poisoned the population, and we need to advance the science and the treatment and the detoxification and the care of these people.
Yeah, we need to extend the lives of the people who are affected.
Yes.
That's absolutely critical. And we need to find out how to retain the fertility of those who still
Yeah.
have, as well as we need societal changes in families, supporting families, the value of children, the cost of children. That's a whole nother discussion for another time.
Yes.
So this is just showing the trending in natural population growth. So from 2018, their population growth was 6,851 natural population growth, and now they're down to losing 15,500 in 2024, and it's worse in 2025. But
And once
I don't
again,
have the
sorry, go ahead.
so I don't have the completed data yet for 2025 for Hong Kong.
And again, just at a very macroscopic level, the same pattern. More consistently, more people dying and consistently less people being born.
Yeah, so Hong Kong's rise in deaths was only 1.4% in 2021, not much, but they had a 24% rise in deaths in 2022.
And again, a
Unprecedented.
6% rise in a sane world would trigger alarms.
And
And
24% loss.
it's unprecedented.
Yeah, but that's pandemic, COVID,
Yeah.
convenient, explanation. Okay, so this is the Hong Kong monthly deaths and monthly COVID vaccines by dose. I have very detailed data for Hong Kong. I would love to do statistical analysis on this if we have an expert statistician and to collaborate to write a paper, because I think we have sufficient data for that. So these are the monthly deaths in red. The blue is the first doses, orange is second doses. We don't see a rise in deaths significant with the rollout of the first and second doses. Third doses, they started in November 2021, low uptake, but there's a spike in deaths. When the uptake went up, we see the massive spike in deaths. And although it's too small to see on this, what we can see is with each new rollout of doses. So for example, there's a small purple here, fifth dose, now there's a spike in deaths. So what we see is extremely spiky deaths that we had not seen in prior trending.
So this is one of the countries showing that, that booster pattern. Each
Booster pattern,
booster
yes.
gets more dangerous, and even with low uptake, you're still seeing significant spikes in dying when people sign up for another booster. Friends, please help your
Yeah.
friends stop taking boosters unless you really don't like them.
Yeah, and interesting, Hong Kong had two vaccines. They had BioNTech, which is Pfizer, and they had Sinovac. So the initial uptake was mostly Sinovac for the primary series, and the booster uptake, they were heavily pushing Pfizer by that time.
And just
So
to clarify, the Sinovac in Hong Kong, was that an antigen-based rather than a genetic injection?
yes, it's an antigen based. It's
Okay,
the Chinese vaccine.
right. So that could
Yeah.
also explain the relative banality of the initial injections.
I don't quite believe that, which I think they probably got different batches.
Ah, I see. I see.
I believe there's a difference in what went to different countries, because in the Philippines, Sinovac was the first vaccine we had here, but the deaths in the Philippines changed immediately.
Ah.
So interesting.
Well, nobody tells the mice what is in the logbook of the injections, right?
Yeah, we have no idea. And we know
Right.
that different batches went to different countries.